It being just a little past 6 p.m., I'll call the Winnebago County Board of Supervisors to order for March 16, 2021. The county clerk has confirmed the roll and we do have a quorum this evening. So we'll move on to the first item on the agenda, which is the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the invocation. If you could please all stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic
for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
with
liberty
liberty and justice for all.
Now the invocation by Supervisor Locke. I'll go ahead and call on Supervisor Powers for the invocation.
Creator of all things, we ask your guidance in all we deliberate tonight. Help us do the best we can for those we serve and looking out always for the betterment of our communities. Sorry, I froze. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Supervisor Powers.
Good job, Karen.
We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, and that's a motion to adopt this evening's agenda. For that, I'll call on Supervisor Albrecht.
To adopt this evening's agenda.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to adopt this evening's agenda. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any
Aye.
opposed, say nay. And that motion carries. And just as a reminder to any supervisor, if we're doing a voice vote and you're uncertain about your vote, if it's a nay vote, just go ahead and raise your Zoom hand with the vote and we'll make sure that we tally your vote. So that motion carries. So we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. And that's a time during each meeting in which we give an opportunity for the public to speak on any item on the agenda or any item under county jurisdiction. Is there anyone who wishes to speak this evening? If so, just go ahead and raise your Zoom hand and I'll call on you in succession. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak this evening? There's two hands up. First, I will call on Jennifer Kozer. Please go ahead.
Good
You can say
evening.
your
Can
name
you
and
hear
address
me?
for the record, please.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes, you can. Okay, thank you. My name is Jennifer Kozer, and you guys know I live in Winnebago. You already have my address. I just wanted to say this evening that it has been 119 days since you voted to amend the county 1108, section 1108 of the county code of Winnebago County, and 21 days since you contemplated passing a general face coverings order, which is unlawful. And I wanted to tell you that we have not forgotten what you've done and that it's not too late for you to change and make things right. It is not too late for you to stop the damage that you're doing and to change things back to the way they were before you started doing things that were unlawful. And that's up to you guys, but I wanted to remind you and let you know that we have not forgotten, the citizens have not forgotten what you've done to us. Otherwise, that's all I wanted to say tonight. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, and thank you for your comments. I see another hand raised. I'll call on Diane Kozer. Please go ahead. If you could state your name and address for the record, please, and please go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Thank you. Diane Kozer from Winnebago. In case you all aren't aware, on March 2nd, the health department posted on Facebook some public propaganda pertaining to, and I quote, making the decision to get a COVID-19 vaccine, end quote. In their, excuse me, I'm sorry, I've lost my train of thought. In the past, it was stated, or in this post, I'm sorry, it was stated that, and I quote again, none of the FDA approved vaccines contain any live COVID-19 virus, end quote. I did some quick research when I found that post on the FDA's website, and these vaccines are not FDA approved. I repeat, they are not FDA approved. They are still clinical trials and will be for quite some time. We are no more than guinea pigs at this point with these vaccines, and people need to know that. So the citizens are actually being lied to and misled about something that's potentially damaging to their bodies by a supposedly trustworthy resource that we fund. Is that okay with all of you as our representatives? It sure as heck is not okay with me. And it makes me wonder what else we've been misled on or lied to about. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments this evening. Next, next speaker is Joan Patterson. If you could please state your name and address for the record, please. Joan Patterson?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you well.
I just wanted to address the surplus in monies that were left over in the year 2020 during COVID, which I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe they total about $18 million in our county budget. And I have to tell you, I'm absolutely appalled. I had to go out to get a COVID test today, and I went out to the fairgrounds, and I could not believe when I had to drive into a barn and I view these two girls literally standing in a room made out of hay bales, 4 walls built out of bales of hay with plastic around the outside edge. And there's a table and they're administering COVID tests to people from our county in a hay bale room in the middle of a barn. If you have $18 million, heck, if you have $1,000 left over, you got to come up with a better plan. I was shocked. I wish I would have taken a picture because I can't make up what I saw. So I don't know if any of you have been out there, but that was the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen in my life. You might as well be administering these tests in the middle of a farming field, for Pete's sake. I'd have to question how accurate they are. There's no plastic on the inside. These girls are literally sitting in a room built out of hay bales. So you got a lot of stuff on the agenda tonight that you want to spend a lot of money on. I would take a look at these all these COVID things that you're so worried about. And if you really want to keep your community safe and make sure our numbers are accurate, I would take a serious look at how you're doing some of this testing. I'm absolutely appalled as a citizen.
Thank you. And thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to speak this evening? If so, just go ahead and raise your Zoom hand. I'll ask one more time. Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to speak this evening? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close that portion of the meeting. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, and that's correspondence. For that, I'll call in Clerk Ermer.
Okay, good evening. You do have a notice of claim from Ralph Gratz for damage caused to his mailbox by a county snowplow. That's referred to Personnel and Finance. There are a couple of resolutions from other counties. First one is from Outagamie County. It's a resolution from the Health and Human Services Committee regarding the COVID-19 pandemic. That is also referred to legislative. Price County resolution request elimination of the 0% levy cap imposed on Wisconsin counties, also referred to the legislative committee. There's a petition for zoning from Diane Crom, Town of Amro, requesting a rezoning from R1 to A2 for general agriculture, and that is referred to the Planning and Zoning Committee. That's all.
Thank you, Clerk Ermer. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, and that's reports from committees, commissions, and boards. any reports from any committees, commissions, and boards from any supervisors? I see a couple hands. I'll first call on Supervisor Lautenschläger. Please go ahead, Supervisor Lautenschläger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This week, I would be in Washington, D.C., along with Supervisor Norton and Supervisor Snyder, attending the NACO Legislative Conference. This conference is usually a week-long conference, but this year we're doing it all by Zoom. So in order to make it so that everybody can attend as much as they can, they stretched this conference out to 3 weeks now. So the attendees could last week I attended my 2 steering committees. I serve on the Human Services and Education Steering Committee and the Health Policy Steering Committee, which I serve as one of the co-chairs on that committee. This year, the conference was basically based on the COVID-19 crisis and how it affects counties, from economic loss on the businesses shutdowns to the shutdowns to schools and its effect on the children and their families, while facilitating safe reopening and helping students overcome learning loss and other social emotional impacts of the pandemic. We had daily updates from Washington, from the White House on the Biden administration's vision for economic recovery. I also attended the Veteran Affairs steering committee because Supervisor Snyder was not able to be out to attend this year to that. And they had a couple of resolutions. And the reason why I did is because the Veterans Committee, any resolutions that they bring forward to the NACO Executive Committee goes through the Health Steering Committee, which I am co-chair of. This week and next week, I will be attending several workshops and general sessions of this conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Lautenschläger. Next speaker is Vice Chairperson Egan. Please go ahead, Vice Chairperson Egan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to remind everyone that next week on Monday at 8:30 a.m., we'll have a Zoom meeting on legislative. There is quite a few interesting topics on there, so it's open to everyone on the board to listen to. And I think it's worthwhile for the board to pay attention to, well, all of them that are on there, but I think that's one that should be coming up that should be quite interesting. And we have open forum, just like here, if anyone would like to ask anything of the legislators. They won't answer probably till the end, but it's open at 8:30, the Zoom will be. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Egan. Next, we'll call on Supervisor Norton. Please go ahead, Supervisor Norton.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I just want to remind everyone that every Monday at 11 a.m., if you're available, the WCA has a leadership conference Zoom call. They have a variety of topics. Yesterday, they had Secretary of the Administration, Peter Bark, on it. And also want to remind people that they have an interesting webinar coming up on 2 weeks on parliamentary procedure the WCA has that you can register for. So that's a couple of things that people could be looking out for and attending. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Norton. Are there any other supervisors with any other reports from committees, commissions, board? Supervisor Eisen, I just want to make sure, I know at one point you had your hand up. I wanted to make sure it didn't accidentally go down, and I wanted to give you an opportunity. Anything to report, Supervisor Eisen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Supervisor Eisen.
This is Supervisor Defferting. I do have something.
Oh, please go ahead, Supervisor Defferting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The NACO Justice and Public Safety Committee meted last week, and there was a couple of resolutions that were put up there on the agenda. 4 resolutions total. One of the resolutions was a proposed interim resolution in opposition to proposed changes to public assistance programs until the COVID-19 crisis is resolved. One of the other resolutions was proposed interim resolution encouraging Congress to fund the Juvenile Justice Delinquency Prevention Incentive Grants to the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. and proposed interim resolution directing the U.S. Department of Justice to provide increased funding to local law enforcement for the procurement of body cameras. And the final one was a proposed interim resolution addressing the impact of COVID-19 on community violence. All 4 resolutions passed. And the Wisconsin Counties Association also had their Judicial and Public Safety Committee meeting, and that was on March 12th. And we examined the proposed governor's budget and changes that were made specifically in regards to juvenile youth justice and juvenile delinquency. We addressed some things in regards to, of course, there was a proposed closing of Lincoln Hills, and that closing has been delayed a little bit because they basically wanted to figure out where else they are going to put those that are at Lincoln Hills right now. And so they are also looking at some proposed grants for counties as well, creating a new pilot community-based service grant program for counties. It's approximately $8,859,000 from general revenue in fiscal year 2021, 2022, and 2023. And it targets population for targets high-risk youth. And so they're still working on doing some changes there in regards to county secure detention facilities. They're going to be eliminating the 365-180 program, and they are looking to replace it with other local, what they call secure residential centers for children and youth. SRCCY is the acronym that they picked for that. So there's quite a bit of changes that we're looking to make with in regards to juvenile justice and criminal justice, and just wanted to report all of my findings there. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Defferty. Are there any other reports from any commissions, committees, or boards from any supervisor? I don't see any other hands, but if there's a hand that's not raised and you want to give a report, please, any supervisor, just open up your mic and go ahead. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close that portion of the agenda. And there's just a notation, so everyone's on the same page, that the February 23rd, 2021 County Board minutes, those were actually approved at our last meeting on March 2nd, 2021, with some clarification of some of the votes. So we don't need to vote on that this evening. So moving on, next is the County Executive's report, followed by the County Executive's appointments. I'll call on Executive Harris.
Thank you. I want to call the board's attention to 2 of the resolutions tonight, 140-03-2021, which is the East Exposition Center improvements, and also 141-03-2021, the field and trail mower. Both of those, I think, are very worthwhile investments in the county property and in the equipment that we use to maintain the trails. And I would urge the board to support those expenditures. I want to reinforce Brian Defferdine's points with regard to changes in the state budget. There's a lot of changes, and the budget as proposed by the governor includes compensation to the counties for those changes. But we'll have to watch closely what happens in joint finance, whether those juvenile justice changes hold up, and whether they hold up and remain accompanied by compensation to the counties. And for instance, Wisconsin has tried individuals between 17 and 18-year-old as adults. They're going to change that back to treating people under 18 as juveniles. That's a good thing, but that does shift the cost from the state to the counties. And the budget does propose monies for us for that change. They're also talking about ending their serious offender program. That program is paid for by the state, and the serious offenders would come back to the counties and would be at our expense. Again, there's money to pay for that, but we don't actually have any facilities that would allow us to deal with that. And then it's come to my attention that, you know, the state prison system has not been able to take prisoners that have been sentenced to the prison that are held short-term in the jail. They've not been able to take those prisoners to the prison on a regular basis. And unfortunately, the state has exhausted the monies they had to pay us for those stays. So now there's over 2,000 prisoners statewide in county jails. And the state is currently saying that they will not be paying the daily rent in our county, $55 a day, that's normally paying for those prisoners, a significant source of revenue to us. We do have the space. However, there's many counties that don't have the space. So they're actually having to pay between $55 and $75 to other counties to board prisoners that really belong to the state. And they're having to bear that cost. So that juvenile offender area is one that we want to watch real closely. The Counties Association suggested that the daily cost for a juvenile stay in Lincoln Hills or Copper Lake may be rising to $700 or more in the next budget year. So those placements can be extremely expensive. Luckily, we've not had any placements of ordinary offenders in Lincoln Hills or Copper Lake for 3 years now, and that's done wonders for our budgets. Last November, if you remember, when we were going to do the bond issue, there was discussion by the board as to whether we should do the full bond issue or apply reserves to part of that issue. And the finance director, myself, urged that we do the full bond issue because of the very low interest rates available at that time, pretty close to 1%. But we promised at that time, and Chuck Fari urged us to do so as well, we promised that we would call the callable bond issues that were at a higher rate of interest. So April 1st, we'll be calling $2.8 million of callable bonds and paying off that principal. And there's also a very large principal payment due on our indebtedness of over 8.3 million. And both of those will be occurring on April 1st. We have the funds available and ready to do so. Everything, I checked with Vicki Fitzgerald today and everything's ready for that to be accomplished as scheduled on the 1st. And that will bring our debt down to $26.9 million, which is about half of what it was 16 years ago. And we're making a good accomplishment. That's actually how we're controlling local property taxes. We take the net new construction number to support our operations, but we've been reducing the citizens' taxes that have to go towards debt service and interest. And that's what's helped us to control those. So as we promised last November, we are calling 2 bond issues and paying those off, as well as the very large principal payment that's due April 1st. That's the end of my report, unless there's any questions. I do have an appointment.
I see one, I see 2 hands raised. So first we'll call on Vice Chair Egan. Please go ahead, Vice Chair Egan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mark, I just have a question. I've been out at the Sunnyview and got both my shots, and I thought that was real well run. Was that woman telling the truth or exaggerating? Are we just in hay bales or straw bales doing these COVID tests, or what's going on out there? We got all this money and that's what it's for, is for COVID things.
Yeah,
I'd just like to hear your answer.
I don't know specifically about that. I take her at her word. When I had a COVID test months ago, the National Guard, Wisconsin National Guard, was doing the COVID tests in temporary tents that they had set up in the parking lot. So they may have wanted a more insulated structure and be using a barn. But it is something we could look at going forward. But for most of this winter, they were doing those tests in pop-up tents because you had to have something that you could drive through.
Well, I don't mind the idea of the barn or the shed, whatever you want to call it, because I've heard other places that's even giving the shots to them. But if it's just straw bales or whatever, there should be ticket booths out there, or they should be able to make some real easy out of plywood instead of just having hay or straw bales piled around them.
You know, I'm hoping that we're only a few months away from completion of this process with COVID-19. But the vaccinations are given inside the Expo Center.
Right.
We also have other locations like the Culver Welcome Center at the university campus. But the testing has always been done, on a drive-through basis. So it's normally, out of doors in either the pop-up tents and now apparently in a barn. But if this were to be going on for a long time, I suspect we would build structures just for that purpose.
There should be tickets. Isn't there tickets? I would think ticket booths or something should be up there. Like I said, they can be made out of plywood very quickly and easily, and they can be reused.
Oh, you're saying there's ticket booths that could be converted to
Sure, instead of
testing
being
structures.
around some, right?
Yeah,
I would think.
I can ask about that. We of course
Okay.
don't charge anything for either the tests, which actually have a significant cost.
I know,
to the
but we got
government.
quite a bit of money, and I think that we can at
Sure.
least make us look professional too.
And we
Thank you.
also don't charge anything for the vaccinations, which, the government is paying for as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Egan. Next, call on Supervisor Binder. Please go ahead, Supervisor Binder.
Just a comment for the grounds there at the Expo Center. If we would have been able to charge them for that space, we lost about $180,000 in revenue that the Parks Department got no payback whatsoever. That's the revenue we lost and the space that we gave them to do the tests and to do the shots. But my main comment that I wanted to ask Mark Harris, our largest budget is human services. And I hear over and over again from the people, we had this money left over and we don't do enough for the people in need. I believe our budget for human services is around $48 million. That's what we give to the people of need. If Mr. Harris could just explain a little bit what we do at Human Services for $48 million for the people that need services, I think this county is above and beyond taking care of the people in need. And I'm so tired of hearing we didn't do enough. We done everything in our power, whatever they let us spend that COVID money on to help the people, we did. We anything we could think of, we tried to do. But if Mr. Harris could explain to them what Human Services does and what programs we provide, there's a difference between handing out a gallon of milk for $1.50 and we basically give vouchers for hundreds of dollars for rent. We basically got programs for the WIC program. But I'm sure Mr. Harris knows a lot more than me, and he could explain that to the people that are listening.
I can explain some of it. For instance, the food share is a federal program, but we do all the administrative part of that. And we did move food share to the maximum allowable amount throughout this pandemic so far. We have the economic support area. I think this would best be given by Dr. Topol, but I can think of two big things the county did. Even before any federal money was available, we took $750,000 from the Industrial Development Board that was in a revolving loan fund, and we used that for small business emergency loans. And we had the Chamber of Commerce and the Oshkosh Area Economic Development Corporation operating that program. But those loans were 0% interest for 6%. I'm saying 0% interest for 6 months and 2% thereafter. Well, all those loans haven't even been given out because when the federal program came out, their loans were forgivable. So of course, the business people preferred to have a forgivable loan than one that they would have to pay back. We also, with the board's approval, set aside $600,000 for mortgage foreclosure relief in an effort to make sure homeowners weren't going to be foreclosed on because of lost income from COVID. We advertised that. We went to the mortgage lenders. We only found a handful of people who could certify that they lost income because of COVID that were behind on their mortgage payments. So in this county, the unemployment's 4.3% currently. The state number came out and it ticked down again. Ours is likely to follow that. We're a month behind on the reporting for counties than for the state. But we're actually at a relatively low level of unemployment. But I understand fully if you're in certain industries, if you're in entertainment, transportation, the hospitality industry, there's many people having a tough time, and we definitely want to help them to the extent that we can. But we're not having the type of crisis that some major metropolitan areas are having. Most of our people are employed. In fact, the most common complaint I hear from business people in the community is that they're having trouble finding enough labor. So we definitely care about the people. We want to give them as much help as we can. But we're not having the crisis here that some parts of the country are having.
I did find a website on the federal for the CARES Act, and there's businesses in Oshkosh that got over $2 million worth of grant money. And a lot of restaurants got between $60,000 and $110,000, $111,000 in CARE money. You know, I looked them up. There was a lot of money available if the people were willing to look for it. And hopefully they were. But we keep hearing that we didn't do enough. And I think Winnebago County went above and beyond. And anything we could possibly do, we tried to do. And I just hear that over and over, like that $18 million. It may sound like a lot of money, but when you got $170-some million budget, it's not that much money.
Thank you, Supervisor Bender. Executive Harris, we'll move on to county executive appointments.
Yes, I have just one appointment tonight. It's for the director of the Parks and Exposition Center, what we often call the Parks Director. And we went through a process of interviewing 8 candidates, and the panel decided on Adam Breest. And his resume is attached to the appointment form. And I believe Adam may be on the call tonight.
I believe I saw his name, Mr. Breeze.
Yes, I am present on the call.
Very good. So why don't we first go ahead, we'll go ahead and take a vote, and then we'll ask Mr. Breeze to speak. So there.
You need a
is
motion to
recommenda-
approve of the appointment, Mr. Chairman? I'll make that motion.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the Director of the Parks Department and Exposition Center appointment of Adam Breeze. Any discussion from any supervisor? If so, go ahead and raise your Zoom hand. Or if you can't raise your Zoom, Supervisor Finch, please go ahead.
Yes, you probably remember, and I know Mark does, I will not be voting because I have relatives in the park system. So I'm just going to sit back and relax.
Thank you, Supervisor Finch.
You're welcome.
Is there any other supervisor who has any comments before we go to a vote? And if you can't raise your Zoom hand, then just go ahead and open up your mic. Seeing none, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay or raise their Zoom hand. Seeing none, that motion passes. Congratulations, Director Breest. Perhaps you can give a few words and a little bit in regards to your background.
Absolutely. Thank you. And it's really great to meet all of you this evening. Meet many of you for the first time. Actually, for the last 5 years, I've worked for the Village of Little Chute as the Parks, Recreation, and Forestry Director. So not too far up the road, just about 20-30 minutes up the road. Before that, I worked for the Village of Germantown and the City of Wisconsin Dells in various roles within their Parks and Recreation departments as well. I just really look forward as going through the process and touring the parks, touring the services that you have down there. I'm really looking forward to serving the residents of Winnebago County. I'm really looking forward to working with Winnebago County staff and the Parks Department to continue the development and the care of all the wonderful parks, the natural areas you have, the trails, the Expo Center, and the boat launches. Just being a county over right now, there's a lot of things like the Wyowash Trail and everything that I've worked with Outagamie County on up here as well. And there's just a lot of great amenities down there in Winnebago. I look forward to hitting the ground running. So thank you for inviting me to this meeting this evening.
Thank you, Director Breeze, for being here tonight, for providing that information and that background. And we certainly look forward to working with you in the near future. Thanks again. Moving on down to the next item, that's County Board Chairman's Report, followed by a couple of appointments. So first, a couple of comments or announcements. So just as a reminder, we have a vacancy in District 10. We have done the public announcement period, and we've had 2 candidates that we have reviewed. We've gathered information on them. I've spoken at length with both candidates individually. I've forwarded the information to Vice Chair Egan for his input, and we will make a decision together. And we do intend to have a recommended appointment for you by our April 20th meeting. So I just wanted to let everyone know that. Then I wanted to let everyone know at our last meeting, or I think it was the meeting prior to that, I mentioned that shooting for a goal of an in-person / Zoom meeting for the April meeting, that would be April 20th. Still shooting for that goal. I'm not promising, like I've said, but that is what we are targeting. I can tell you that it doesn't look like it'll be able to be at the Exposition Center just because of other things that are going on there. So we are looking at other options and exploring other options. So once again, that's the goal for the April 20th meeting. It's not a guarantee, but it is what we are working towards. So just wanted to give you an update on that. Then I wanted to give you an update on the motion to indefinitely postpone. If you recall at the last meeting, I gave you my interpretation after doing some further reading in Robert's rules. And at that time, based on what I had read in Robert's rules, kind of the big book, so to speak, that a motion to indefinitely postpone basically ends that resolution for the current session. And I read to you all the passage from Robert's rules in regards to that. I told you at that time that that was just my interpretation, that I did not know that for certain, and I certainly wanted to get our corporation counsel's input in regards to it. She is our parliamentarian. So she has taken a look at it, and she agrees that that does kill it for this session. Now, that doesn't mean there couldn't be another order, just that specific order could not be brought back forward for this session. So I just wanted to make you all aware of that because I told you I would follow up and ask for some clarification about that. And then I just wanted to make sure people were kind of on the same page of what I was thinking about for, the county board tour, because normally it's in May. I wanted to let you all know that I do want to have a county board tour this year. I think May is too early. As you all know, we transport around the county in a bus. And I think logistically, that would be challenging as soon as May, because that would normally be 2 months from now, May 17th. The numbers are looking better. The vaccines are going up. But I think, once again, we drive in a bus from location to location throughout the day. And I think that would present that as a challenge. So I'm telling you all that because I'm going to shoot for a day and to try to identify a day in July, sometime in July. Now, obviously, I don't have a crystal ball, but just like I've done before, I still want to give you a target of what we're going to shoot for it. So I'm going to try to identify a day in July. Hopefully everything will continue as it is. Hopefully the vaccine front will continue to progress like it is. And we'll be able to realize that. Just wanted to let you know what I'm thinking at this time and hoping that we'll be able to accomplish. So I just kind of wanted to give you that background and update. Any questions from any supervisors in regards to any of that before we go to
Mr. Chairman, this is
yeah, please go ahead, Supervisor Snyder.
Yes. Did we miss Winnebago County Housing Authority? Did Mark Harris intend on appointing Scott Waterworth tonight, or was that pulled?
Well, and I did notice that he had mentioned one appointment, so I gathered that as meaning that he was holding off on that one.
Actually, I've got it.
But you are correct. It looks like that was not his intention. So before we go to the county board chairperson's appointments, we'll go back up to that one. Okay, but before we do that, any questions from any supervisors in regards to any of my updates? Okay. All right, very good. So we're gonna move back up to the county executive appointment to the Winnebago County Housing Authority, Scott Waterworth. I'll call on Executive Harris.
I apologize. I missed that. I'd like to nominate for reappointment to the Winnebago County Housing Authority, Scott Waterworth.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the appointment to the Winnebago County Housing Authority. Is there any discussion? If so, raise your Zoom hand, or if you can't, just call out any supervisor. Seeing none, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries. Moving on down to the county board chairman's appointments. We have two of them this evening. The first one is for the Information Systems Committee for Supervisor Jerry Finch. Is there a motion?
So moved.
There's a motion.
Second.
I did hear a second. Is there any discussion? If so, go ahead and raise your Zoom hand. Seeing none, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries. We'll move on to the final appointment, and that's an appointment to the Personnel and Finance Committee of Supervisor Morris Cox. Is there a motion?
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the Personnel and Finance Committee appointment. Any discussion? If so, go ahead and raise your Zoom hand. Seeing none, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay.
Abstain.
And we have one abstention. Thank you, Supervisor Wingren. That motion carries. Moving on down to the next item, that's zoning reports and ordinances. We had one this evening. It's report number 001, Catherine L. Biebel, Karis M. Foss, Gordon D. Foss, and Marcia J. Foss, Town of Romero. For that, I'll call on Supervisor Ellis.
For report number 1 on the floor.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve report number 001. Any discussion? If so, go ahead and raise your Zoom hand. And once again, if you can't, Supervisor, then go ahead and just open up your mic. Okay, seeing none, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries. Moving on down to amendatory ordinance number 030121, rezoning from R1A2 rural residential / general agriculture to R2A2 suburban low density residential / general agriculture for tax parcel number 016-0311. Once again, call on Supervisor Ellis.
Move for mandatory ordinance 030121.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve amendatory ordinance number 030121. Any discussion? If so, once again, raise your Zoom hand or open your mic. Seeing none, we'll once again do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries. And then just as a reminder to any supervisor, if we're doing nay votes and you're not sure that we heard your nay vote, just go ahead and raise your Zoom hand and we'll go ahead and clarify. So that motion carries, and that concludes zoning reports and ordinances. So we'll move on to resolutions and ordinances. The first one is resolution number 135-03-2021, commendation for Gina Iden. For that, I'll call on Supervisor Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for approval of resolution 135-03-2021.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Please proceed, Supervisor Rasmussen.
Gina Iden retired February 12, 2021, after a 1992 start in the Facilities Department, followed by a 1993 move to Information Systems. She then worked, quote, all things telephone related to all county departments for almost 29 years. As a telecommunications specialist, Gina coordinated the desk phones, cell phones, pagers, wiring, and paid all of the associated bills. She was the guardian of telephone budgets, as she ensured those bills were accurate and represented the best option the county could get. On top of that, she had a great telephone voice for creating messages. She's looking forward to just taking care of her own phone and all the pictures of her 4 grandchildren that are on it. Congratulations to Gina on her retirement.
Thank you, Supervisor Rasmussen. There was a motion and a second to approve. We'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries. Moving on down to the next resolution. Resolution number 136-03-2021. Commendation for Mark Binder. I'll once again call on Supervisor Rasmussen.
Thank you. I'll move for resolution 136-03-2021.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Please proceed, Supervisor Rasmussen.
With 25 years of service to the citizens of Winnebago County, Mark Binder retired from the Sheriff's Office on February 7, 2021. Mark began his career with the Winnebago County Sheriff's Office in 1995 as a corrections deputy. In 2000, Mark transferred to the Patrol Division. In 2004, Mark was promoted to corporal and returned to the Corrections Division in a leadership role. While in corrections, Mark worked as a ship supervisor, booking room supervisor, and for approximately 7 years, the supervisor of the Inmate Transportation Unit. On January 1, 2021, Mark was promoted to the position of sergeant within the Corrections Division. Mark's experience was an asset to both the agency and many of the newly hired staff that worked under his leadership. Mark's distinguished record and compassionate service is both commendable and appreciated. Please join me in expressing our gratitude and best wishes as he enters retirement.
Thank you, Supervisor Rasmussen. There was a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? We'll once again then do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. And that motion carries unanimously. Moving on down to the next resolution. It's resolution number 137-03-2021. Disallow claim of Christopher J. Alexander. Once again, calling Supervisor Rasmussen.
Thank you. Move for resolution number 137-03-2021.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve resolution number 137-03-2021. Any discussion? If so, go ahead and raise your Zoom hand, or otherwise open up your mic. Seeing none, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries. Moving on to the next item, that's the top of the second page. It's resolution number 138-03-2021. Disallow claim of Peter Long. I'll once again call on Supervisor Rasmussen.
Thank you. I move for resolution number 138-03-2021.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve resolution number 138-03-2021. Any discussion? So go ahead and raise your Zoom hand. I see one. First, I'll call on Supervisor Shorsey. Please go ahead, Supervisor Shorsey.
There we go. That's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Supervisor Shorsey. Any other discussion? Seeing none, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. And that motion carries. Moving on down to the next item. That's resolution number 139-03-2021. Disallow claim of Christopher D. Turner. I'll once again call on Supervisor Rasmussen.
Thank you. I move for resolution number 139-03-2021.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve resolution number 139-03-2021. Any discussion? If so, go ahead and raise your Zoom hand, or if you're unable to do that, just go ahead and open up the mic. Seeing none, we'll once again do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Moving on to the next resolution. That's resolution number 140-03-2021. Authorize a capital project for the Winnebago County Parks Department for improvements to the East Exposition Campus Expo stormwater drainage, camping, and road infrastructure at a cost of $1,636,200, funded with either a transfer from the undesignated general fund balance or an advance from the general fund to be reimbursed with a subsequent bond issue. For that, I'll call on Supervisor Konetsky. Supervisor Konetsky? I'll then call on Supervisor Binder.
I'll move resolution 140-032021.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve resolution number 140-03-2021. We'll open it up for discussion. I see one hand raised. I'll call on Supervisor Gabbard. Please go ahead, Supervisor Gabbard.
Thank you, Chairman Ramos. Perhaps someone could answer this question for me. I don't know if it's a committee member or someone from the Parks Department. I would like to know when this project will start. I think we were told it wasn't going to start until August, but I guess I'd like a little bit more of an update. What's going to start first and when, and how much will we be able to get done of this year?
Anyone from the Parks Committee who would wish to answer Supervisor Gabbard's question?
I think Vicky's on.
Director Fitzgerald?
That would be Acting Director Vicky Redlin.
Okay, I apologize. I heard him say it.
Yeah.
And I thought the same, but I thought, well, it has financial
Yeah,
implications.
both you guys are on.
Acting Director
you.
Redlin?
Yes, we are hoping that we can start up this fall. We also have Chase Rutler from Rutler Corp. Who is on. He is the landscape architect for this job, so he may be able to give us a little bit more of an idea. We have some engineering yet to do, but otherwise, if we have our fingers crossed, the weather is cooperating. Hopefully we can get started after the fair.
Thank you very much. Anything further, Supervisor Gabbard?
Yeah, I guess if Chase Rutler's there, would he be able to tell me what we're going to start on first? I would assume it's stormwater drainage and how long that would possibly take.
Very good. Please go ahead, Chase Rutler.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, big picture on schedule. This project will happen relatively with everything occurring at the same time. With this approval, that will then authorize us to get started on design and permitting, which for this project will be somewhat of a process. There's potential wetland impacts on site, so that'll need to go through DNR permitting. I think a fall start, potentially a late fall start is feasible. That being said, we will need to get permits from the city of Oshkosh as well as the state DNR. So either with a fall start or a spring of 2022 start, that project will really all occur at the same time in building the additional parking lots, the stormwater drainage improvements, as well as the electrical improvements throughout those areas. So it'll kind of all be happening at the same time.
Okay, so in your opinion, the stormwater, okay, let's put it best. Your engineering and design work could take place starting now to say fair time, and then you'd be ready to, if weather permitting, you'd be ready to rock and roll on the drainage part for sure. Yeah, this fall.
Absolutely. With approval, we will get started as soon as we can.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Gabbard. Next speaker is Supervisor Eisen, followed by Supervisor Rasmussen. Please go ahead, Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to extend greetings to our new Parks Department Director and provide him with a supervisor's head up from Winnebago County. I would like to start with this resolution. I was curious that this resolution addressed phase 1 of the project, which is line 14 of the resolution. So I did some checking. And I searched through the county executive's 5-year capital expenditure plan for 2021 to 2025. And that tells us that over the next 5 years, the Parks Department will have expenses programmed at $10,510,960. This starts with this project, phase 1, and it schedules phase 2, the Expo West Campus drainage and parking lot, which appropriates or asks for $3,414,260 scheduled for 2022. And I just heard one of the park department supervisors express that this project may not start till 2022 if things work out in that fashion. Well, let's take it to phase number 3. The capital projects plan says phase 3 is the expo maintenance barn and path and road improvements. So I guess the improvements that were asked for by a recipient of a COVID test in a barn is scheduled for 2025. And the price tag of that project is $2,200,000. Now, in addition to these scheduled expenses, the Parks Department has just asked for $1.8 million for a boat launch project problem solved that could be solved by one of our supervisors having stated that it could be solved with a $15,000 investment in gravel. So at this point, I would ask our new park director to get up to speed on the park's priorities. I think I have no reason not to go ahead and approve this this evening, but I think that our Parks Department supporters are a little overzealous, and I would like to remind our new director that the county board holds the purse strings and that these park improvements are discretionary expenses. So with that, I have more to say, but I will defer to others at this time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Supervisor Eisen. Next speaker is Supervisor Rasmussen, followed by Supervisor Ellis. Please go ahead, Supervisor Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to comment on the funding, the resolution, how it said from the general fund or from the bond issue, kind of what Mr. Harris talked about, that originally would have been bonding, and that because of the high fund balance, that could change, and that decision doesn't have to be made until bonding time, because as you know, we do pay for these projects out of the general fund and then reimburse them with the bond issue if needed. So that's why that's written the way it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Rasmussen, for that clarification. Next, I'll call on Supervisor Ellis. Please go ahead, Supervisor Ellis.
Yeah, just wondering how many bids have we got on this, and basically when it's going to start this fall, like you said. Have we got 3 bids or something like this to look at that 1,636,000?
We aren't at the bidding point yet. We still have to engineer it and put the plans together, and then it will go out for bids. So right now we don't have anything out there yet.
Thank you. Thank you, Supervisor Ellis. Next speaker is Supervisor Binder, followed by Supervisor Shorsey. Please go ahead, Supervisor Binder.
Thank you. This is like the first phase of getting ready for some entertainment on that stage. We need to get more electrical out there for the camping. We need to get more parking lots. The DNR isn't going to let us park in County Park in 4 more years. We have to keep everything on the expo side. So when we hold an event there and we get 25 or 30,000 people, which right now we lost Rock USA and Country USA. We need to bring something into the valley, and it needs to come to the expo center. That's the only place for it right now. Our businesses are basically struggling, our hotels, our restaurants. We need to get that up and running by 1920 or 2022. So that is our goal. Our goal is to get the first phase of this project so we have a little more parking, a little more camping. When Rob was here, he worked with Ray at the Highway Department. They're going to crush the airport terminal, and they're going to be able to use some of that gravel in constructing these parking lots and the roads. So that is going to save the county, I would think, a considerable amount of money, because otherwise you're going to have to truck that all the way to Outagamie County because our landfill does not accept any concrete. So it's an essential project in order to get us to the next phase of getting this stage up and running. If we don't complete this, I don't foresee that going forward. And right now, I think our businesses are looking upon us to help them out of this COVID disaster that we're in. And in 22, bring something to the valley that they can look forward to and maybe have a prosperous year. So I truly hope my county supervisors support this and move this forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Binder. Next speaker is Supervisor Shorsey. Please go ahead, Supervisor Shorsey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is just a refresher. I do support this request, but as a refresher, if you all recall, we were having, even 2 years ago, kind of all along the way, we were having frustration with the fact that projects were coming to us through parks, and there really was not a master plan for what needed to be done. And I think personally, I think you could argue that we've neglected some things over the years that probably needed to be done. But this is all part of, or it's coming out of that master plan that was completed, and I believe was presented to us in a special orders session not long ago. So the boat launch thing that's a separate, that was a little bit of that was a surprise for us, but the rest of this is in a master plan. So I would suggest if you'd like to see that again, we could bring that back, or you could talk to the new parks director directly. So just a reminder. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Shorsey. Seeing no other call-ins, we'll go to a vote. We'll attempt a voice vote on this one, but I want to make sure all supervisors know this vote and the next one require 3/4 vote of the membership, so 27 votes. So when we do the nay votes, I will ask audibly, and then I will ask to raise your Zoom hand. If you're uncertain, please go ahead and open up your mic if you're a nay vote when we tally the nay votes. If there's any uncertainty, we will then go to a roll call vote. But first,
I see
Yep.
Chuck Fari has his hand up.
Oh, Supervisor Fari, please go
Yes,
ahead.
sir. Thank you. It's actually a clapping hand. Can you see that or not?
I did not see it at the time, no.
Okay, but it is visible, correct? I mean, I can use that?
I believe you can use that, yes.
Okay, good. My question is specific to the drainage. Obviously, we have no plans here of how that's going to be accomplished. So we have a consultant, I believe. I'll address my question to that person. I don't recall his name.
Yeah, in terms of drainage, and Vicky Shorsey alluded to the fact that we did develop a master plan for the overall expo facility over the last few years now. And in doing so, those stormwater calculations, anticipated stormwater calculations are included. So as part of that master plan, we've set aside areas as well as dollars to provide vast stormwater improvements out at the site. Obviously, if anybody's been there following a significant rainfall event, or not even a significant rainfall event, it's pretty apparent there's drainage issues. So those have been factored into the master plan quantitatively and are part of the anticipated project.
Okay, my question, you're going to keep the water that's on that site and retain it, correct?
To an extent, we will greatly improve the volume available to keep water on the site, but over time it will slowly flow mostly south onto the community park parcel. So we will improve the current condition.
So that water basically is going to be kept on site by the ponds. Would that be correct? And the overflow pipes on the ponds will run under the highway through the park. Is that correct?
Correct. The existing Highway Y.
And that drains. Yeah, that's correct. And that water drains down Ching, Lake Winnebago.
Sorry, Supervisor, I'm losing your connection.
We're losing a little bit of your audio, unfortunately, Supervisor Fari. It's breaking up a little bit.
I am having a little trouble. I'm concerned, if you're going to keep the water on site, that would require the ponds, obviously. But if you're going to run water off site through the town of Oshkosh to Lake Winnebago, that's a bit of a concern.
This based on the based on the city's requirements, we can't have any more water leave the site after the project is completed than before. So we'll have to accommodate that additional runoff from the additional parking areas as part of the project, which we have anticipated in the master plan of the project as well as the budgeting.
How many ponds do you anticipate constructing?
As part of phase one, I'm just pulling up the graphic right now. There are 4 separate ponds.
Okay, and location, I assume, would be primarily to the east of the site?
Primarily against the County Highway Y right-of-way, and then also 1 pond directly east of lot 4, which is the lot directly south of the open air stadium area.
Okay, and they're all going to be fenced, I assume?
They will be wet ponds with a safety shelf. At this point, we're not showing fencing around them. If that's something that the Parks Department wants to include, we can include that.
And what's the average depth of the ponds?
That'll be calculated as part of the design.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Fari. I see one other hand up. I'll call on Supervisor Eisen. Please go ahead, Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like a clarification on the therefore be it resolved clause. I see that there is and I know that Supervisor Rasmussen made mention of this, but I'm not entirely clear on whether we want to just take money from the general fund or whether we want a bond for this expense. What is the decision?
Thank you, Supervisor Eisen. I see your question in regards to that. I think the intent of the motion is that it would actually come from the undesignated general fund balance, but could be a subsequent bond issue later on. Supervisor Rasmussen?
I would like to resolve this question now.
It's a fair question. I think it's just some wording on that line.
I do not like the either or uncertainty about how this is going to be funded. We know that interest rates are extremely low. And we know that we have a mechanism to deal with these expenses so we can hold the tax rate down. I would like to make a amended motion to strike the either or choices from the line 24 and 25 and simply allow the financing from an advance from the general fund with a subsequent bond issue.
Thank you, Supervisor Eisen. And just to clarify what I think you're driving at, and you tell me if I'm wrong, on line 24, you would really have a period after infrastructure, and everything after that on line 24 and 25 would simply be stricken, correct?
No.
Line 24 eliminating the either.
Okay, so to be funded
on an advance from the general fund to be subsequently to be funded by a subsequent bond issue. So it's not either or, it's simply advancing the expenses from the general fund to be
If I may, could I interrupt for a moment? We have certain wording we need to have per our bond counsel. So before you rewrite it, just let me know.
we'll absolutely call on you, Director Fitzgerald, to make certain in case. So please clarify your motion so we're all clear on it, Supervisor Eisen.
well, I would ask the finance director, I'll express what my goal is and let her put it into the professional terms. In other words, or why don't we just say it to be funded by the by a bond issue? And make it simple.
Is that your motion, Supervisor Eisen?
Yeah, I think that's appropriate.
Okay.
Instead of leaving it uncertainty, you don't know whether you're going to draw down on the general fund or bond for it. We'll make a decision to bond for it. 1.5% interest.
And just if I could restate to make certain that I'm clear on what your amendment is, then on line 24, it would say to be funded by a bond issue, period. Is that correct?
To be funded with a bond with a bond issue.
To be funded with a bond issue. Very good. Is there a second?
Or if it's more appropriate to say an advance from the general fund.
Supervisor Eisen, 1 second. So that motion failed for a lack of a second, but please go ahead with your clarification.
To be funded on an advance from the general fund with a subsequent bond issue to be repaid from a subsequent bond issue.
Okay, and I'll restate it. So on line 24, after infrastructure, it'll say to be, or after to be funded, it'll say to be funded on an advance from the general fund to be paid with a subsequent bond issue.
Correct.
Okay,
To be
is there a
repaid.
second?
To be repaid.
Is there a second? So that motion fails, Supervisor Eisen. Anything further, Supervisor Eisen? And why don't we go ahead to Director Fitzgerald so she can provide some context, because I know she had some comments. Please go ahead, Director Fitzgerald.
I had just raised my hand earlier to say the reason we wrote it this way is we don't bond until November. And we just are going to watch the market, see where it's at. I still have to manage this huge surplus as well. So we are going to just look at everything that's in the CIP plan that we plan on bonding for, look at the rates, make sure it makes sense. And we just want to have that flexibility to be able to choose that if need be. But if we did end up changing the wording, there's specific wording that has to be in there for bond counsel.
Thank you, Director Fitzgerald. Next, I'll call on Supervisor Binder.
Just in reference to Supervisor Eisen, the 10-year bond is already up to 1.6%. It could be well over 2% in November. So that's why it was written like that. So we could look at it in November and decide if it was feasible for us to pay it out of the reserves or if it was better for us to bond. Interest rates are going up. It's a sign. And I think it'll be well over 2% in November. So I think leaving it the way it is, it gives the county the best option. Thanks.
I agree.
Thank you, Supervisor Binder.
Right on.
Any other discussion?
Yes, sir.
Supervisor Fari, please go ahead.
Question. Thank you. Vicky, what is the current undesignated fund balance?
Well, currently we're still going through the audit. What I like to say is our audited balance last year was 32.5 million. I'm unaudited preliminarily looking at possibly about 16, 17 million at this point after a pre-audit journal entries are done. So after adding that 17 million and taking out what we're paying for that callable debt, it's going to be near 40 million.
Anything further, Supervisor Fari?
No, that's good. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Fari. Any other questions or comments before we go to a vote?
Call the question, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Well, there are no other call-ins, so we don't have to go to that. So we'll go directly to a vote. Okay. So just as a clarification, this requires a 3/4 majority of the membership or 27 votes. So if there's any clarity on the nays, I would ask you to raise your Zoom hand when we do nays or open up your mic. If we're uncertain, we'll do a roll call vote. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed say nay or raise their Zoom hand or open up their mic.
Supervisor Defferting, I vote no.
Thank you, Supervisor Defferting. Any other no?
Votes no.
Supervisor Wingren is a no, so that's 2 no votes. Any other no votes?
Supervisor Ellis votes no.
Supervisor Ellis is a no, so that's 3 no votes. Any further?
Supervisor Fari will vote no also.
That's 4 no votes. With that, I'm going to go to a roll call vote. I believe it passed. However, I want to make certain that all members, because it can change while we're on a Zoom call, are accounted for with their vote. So we're going to go to a roll call vote to confirm the vote. So I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Supervisor Konetsky,
Aye.
Supervisor Brunn,
Yes.
Supervisor Borchert,
Yes.
Supervisor Eisen,
Aye.
Aye.
Supervisor Ramos, Supervisor Defferting,
No.
Supervisor Lenz,
Aye.
Supervisor Newhoff,
Yes.
Supervisor Nussbaum,
Aye.
Supervisor Albrecht, Supervisor Gabbard,
Aye.
Supervisor Binder,
Aye.
Supervisor Conrad,
Aye.
Supervisor Shorsey,
Aye.
Supervisor Belmonte. She's absent. Okay. Supervisor Gordon,
Aye.
Supervisor Wingren,
No.
Supervisor Lautenschlager,
Aye.
Supervisor Norton,
Aye.
Supervisor Warnke,
Aye.
Supervisor Zelmer,
Aye.
Supervisor Skellinger,
Aye.
Supervisor Buck,
Aye.
Supervisor Powers,
Aye.
Supervisor Locke. She's absent. Supervisor Cox, Supervisor Finch,
Aye.
Supervisor Youngquist, Supervisor Fari,
No.
Supervisor Rasmussen,
Aye.
Supervisor Keller,
Aye.
Supervisor Egan, Supervisor Ellis,
No.
Supervisor Snyder,
Aye.
Supervisor Jose.
Aye.
Okay, Supervisor Cox, Supervisor Youngquist.
Aye.
Okay, Supervisor Egan. Okay, so there's two that I couldn't hear a vote. So.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yes. Okay, Tom, Supervisor Egan?
Yes.
Yes, okay. One more time, Supervisor Cox? Okay, can't find him. Okay. Okay. Supervisor Cox? Okay.
So that motion passes 28-4. So just as a reminder to everyone, the reason we went to a roll call vote is because it requires 3/4 of the membership, irrespective of whether all the membership is here. So that means it requires 27 votes for passage. So as it did have 28 votes, it does pass. So that motion carries. So we'll move on then.
Can I ask a question, Mr. Chairman?
Certainly, Supervisor Wingren, please go ahead.
When does this, we I think talked about this before, when does the account have to include members that are present at the meeting only? And when does it have to not have that qualification? Could you clarify that for me, please?
That's a fair question. I believe it has to do with the funding and the funding level. I'm going to call, because I'm not 100% certain if I'm accurate on that, so I'm going to call on our corporation counsel, Mary Ann Miller, to explain when it requires the 3/4 of the membership and when it requires 2/3 of the membership. Corporation counsel?
No, my question isn't the fraction, it's are you counting everybody, the 36 members, or are you counting, in fact, this is 35 members, as you recall.
Certainly. Now I understand what you're saying. The membership, as I understand, would still be the 36, even if there's a vacancy.
But there's not, there can't possibly be 36. There was only 35 members.
And what we'll do is we'll get clarification from the corporation counsel so that we all know that, because it's a fair point what you're asking, Supervisor Winger, because that could come into play at some point. I certainly can appreciate what you're asking. I believe it's the membership of the total board versus members present, but I'm not certain. So we'll get clarification for you from the corporation counsel.
Mr. Chairman? Mr.
Yes.
Chairman?
Please go ahead.
Could we have Mr. Chairman, could we
Yes.
have this done for our next meeting? Because
Yes,
we've got a lot on our plate now, and the questions is very reasonable, but for something like that, it's holding us back on what's more important at the present time. So if she could get her information and have it for us for our next county board meeting, where she'll have all the time in the world to explain it.
Yes, Supervisor Finch, that is exactly what I'll ask her to do, because it passed irrespective of the answer to that question, because it had 28 votes, but we will get clarification so we all know in the future.
Thank you.
And Chairman Ramos, I will follow that, but just in terms of the summary, when there are bond issues in terms of issuing debt, the requirement for passage statutorily is 3/4 of members elect.
Okay, and so the one question for us to clarify that doesn't have to be answered tonight necessarily, but Supervisor Wingren had asked, and it's a relevant question, is members elect, does that mean 35 currently since there's a vacancy, or does it mean still 36? So that's the one part for us to clarify for the future.
That's fine, I will look into that.
Now, would it make a difference for this particular vote is what the thrust of
It would have not made a difference.
Because the people that were absent we count as no. We were always told if you abstain or you vote no, you're not there. It's a vote or no vote. That's the thrust of my question.
Yep, it's a fair question. It would not have changed this vote, because if we would have used 35, technically you would have needed just under 27 to make a 3/4. So it would have not have changed the passage of this one, but nonetheless, we'll get clarification for the future, Supervisor Wingren.
Did we get a vote from Supervisor Cox? I see his hand is raised.
No, we didn't, but we did call the vote, so it was 28-4.
Okay.
Very good. So we will move on then to the next item, and that's resolution number 141-03, 2021. Authorize a capital project from the Winnebago County Parks Department to purchase a field and trail mower at a cost of $180,000, funded with either a transfer from the undesignated general fund balance or an advance from the general fund to be reimbursed with a subsequent bond issue. For that, I'll call on Supervisor Konecki.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At times I'm being muted here and I'm not touching anything, but I'm on now, so I witness for the approval of resolution 141-03, 2021.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve resolution number 141-03, 2021. We'll open it up for any discussion. If so, go ahead and raise your Zoom hand. And if you are unable to do that, any supervisor, go ahead and open up your mic.
This is Supervisor Powers. I don't have a Zoom hand tonight.
Please go ahead, Supervisor Powers.
I was wondering if we currently have a mower, and this is a replacement for an old one, and if we do have one, what's being done with either the item itself or parts, or is it valuable to anybody else?
I can answer that if you like.
Please go ahead.
We do not have one. We are using the highway department's mowers, and they told us that they basically need them and that we should look at getting our own. And it actually would be nice for the parks, because the highway department basically works 4 10-hour days. So the only day we could use it is on a Friday. And their mowers, basically, they're not all new. They have no mechanic on a Friday. So if they break down, then we have nothing. So it's essential for the parks to get this piece of equipment, because when it rains, it's the ideal time to put somebody in that mower. We got 20 miles of trail to cut both sides. So that's like 40 miles. And it's like they can go out there on a bad day, get out of the weather and get the trails cut. And when we got nice weather, it's great to work outside and get the parks works done that you do when the weather's nice. So it would just be nice for the parks to actually own this mower. And it's something that will last them probably 15 to 20 years. They're high maintenance on the mower. The tractors run pretty much maintenance free, but the mowers are cutting into ditches. So it does take a little bit of a beating. So it's nice. You get them serviced in the spring. They're good to go all summer. And the parks basically will be able to do their work when it needs to be done rather than trying to beg a mower from the highway department, which they really don't have any to spare. I mean, they used to have like 5 or 6 of them. I think they're down to 3. And it's something that Parks Department needed for a long time. And it sure would be nice if our fellow supervisors could support it.
Thank you, Supervisor Bender.
Thank you, Supervisor Bender, and thank you, Supervisor Powers. Next call on Supervisor Zelmer. Please go ahead, Supervisor Zelmer.
Hi, any idea what horsepower tractor will be purchasing? They say it's 100 plus, but we're gonna go 140, 120 horsepower. Any idea yet?
Yes, Tom McGinnis is on the call here. He is in charge of our fleet, so he can give you a little more background on what we're looking at.
Please go ahead, Tom McGinnis. Tom McGinnis?
Okay, there we go. I'm okay. We're looking at with some suggestions from the highway department, since they have the most experience with this. They're looking at closer to the 125 without upgrading the frame too much. So we're looking at 125. Some of the highway department mowers right now are 112 horsepower to 120-ish. So 120, closer to the 125 than the 100, but not as large as the 140.
Thank you for that information. And very good. Thank you, Supervisor Zelmer. Any other questions or call-ins? I don't see any other hands at this time. If we missed anyone, just go ahead and open up your mic. Seeing no other call-ins, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay or raise their Zoom hand. I see one nay vote. That motion carries. We're moving on down to the next resolution. It's resolution number 142-03-2021. Approve the Winnebago County Coroner's Office to transfer $53,905 from the other fees revenue and automobile allowance accounts to other operating expenses, pathology services, and transportation accounts to cover additional autopsy fees due to an increase in deaths. With that, I'll call on Supervisor Wingren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move approval of this resolution.
There's a motion and a second to approve resolution number 142-03-2021. Any discussion? If so, go ahead and raise your Zoom hand, or any supervisor open up their mic. Seeing none, we'll do a voice vote.
I've got point of order.
I apologize. Please go ahead, Supervisor Eisen.
Yeah, this is resolution 143, not 142.
No.
No, it's
No,
one-
it isn't 142.
142.
Yes.
142.
Just to confirm for everyone, we're on resolution 142.
Listen your time, Mr. Eisen.
That's 03-2021.
Okay, I apologize. I was out of order.
Thank you, Supervisor Eisen. All right, we were going to a vote. There was a motion and a second. We're going to do the voice vote over again. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed say nay or raise their Zoom hand. Hearing no nays, that motion carries. Moving on down to the second to last resolution. This is resolution number 143-03-2021. Approve the Winnebago County Treasurer's Office to transfer $25,100 from the interest on taxes revenue account to other operating expenses, accounting fees account to cover additional banking fees due to the decline in banking interest income rates. For that, I'll call on Supervisor Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for resolution number 143-03-2021.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve resolution number 143-03-2021. Any discussion from any supervisor, go ahead and raise your Zoom hand or open up your mic. Seeing none, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed say nay or raise their Zoom hand. Seeing none, that motion carries. Moving on down to the final resolution this evening. It's resolution number 144-03-2021. Reauthorizing self-insured program for workers' compensation. Once again, I'm calling Supervisor Rasmussen.
Thank you. I move for resolution number 144-03-2021.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve resolution number 144-03-2021. Any discussion? If so, just raise your Zoom hand or open up your mic. Seeing none, we'll once again do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay or raise their Zoom hand. Seeing none, that motion carries. So that concludes all our business for this evening. And with that, then I'll call on Supervisor Albrecht for a motion to adjourn to April 20th. Supervisor Albrecht.
I move to adjourn until April 20th.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to adjourn to April 20th. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed say nay. That motion carries. We are adjourned. You all have a wonderful evening. Thank you very much.
Have a good night.
You.
Good night, everyone.